Today on the Playbook Podcast, the Republicans win an election, but their margin of victory looks ominously small as we head into 2026. Steve Witkoff is back in DC after his latest jaunt to the Kremlin, but there's still no peace deal. And Pete Hegseth's big week is getting even bigger. We'll all be reading the Signalgate report tomorrow. Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Wednesday, December 3rd.
How are you, Dasha? It's good to have you back. How's things?
Thank you. Busy, my friend. We got a lot coming up. I won't give the full tease here, but things are coming.
All I want to know is, did you spend 2 hours last night glued to the Tennessee special election like I did? Did you sit there watching election nerds tweeting about it while you were watching in real time people analyze the results of this small part of Nashville?
I mean,
clues?
listen. Is the Pope Catholic?
You can't help yourself, can you?
Can't help myself. Yourself. You know, I love elections.
We know why you're listening to this podcast, because you absolutely love this stuff as much as we do. But so you know already that the Tennessee 7th Congressional District had a special election last night and the Republicans won, which they were expected to do, but the margin of victory, Dasha, was not enough to have many Republicans celebrating on the Hill. Matt Van Epps, their candidate, won by something like 8 points approximately, which sounds like a comfortable win, and it is, until you factor in the fact that only a year ago, Donald Trump, and indeed the former member of Congress, Mark Green, won this district by 22 points. So that is a huge drop in 1 year.
And look, coming off of November's election, this is, flashing red warning signs for the Republican Party. And this is exactly what they were concerned about. Everyone, as you said, was expecting that he would win. But the reason that a ton of money poured in, a ton of attention poured in, the president did a tele-rally in Tennessee for this race, because everybody knew that the narrative would matter. And the narrative, what they feared, was that Republicans are facing some serious challenges.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any other conclusion you can draw from this result. It wasn't a catastrophe for the Republicans, but if they'd actually somehow lost the seat, then we would be talking like full meltdown this morning. If it had been just, a few hundred votes in it, similarly, they won it comfortably, but they kind of were, by the end, pulling out all the stops, right? We saw Mike Johnson there campaigning in person all through Monday. We saw Donald Trump doing tele rallies and posting away, and it's like they suddenly realized we've got a problem here. And actually, they had a decent candidate too in this case. Van Epps is a military veteran. He's a helicopter pilot. He's a slick candidate by all accounts.
Aftyn Behn is somebody that is very progressive, has said things in the past that the Republicans really ran with, like saying she doesn't like Nashville, which is in her district, saying
not ideal
that she hates country music, advocating.
That's before you get onto the politics.
Right, and that's before you get to the the defund the police stuff, and she called herself a radical at one point, so there was a lot that Republicans were working with from her history, and still the results bore out that this is a problem for the GOP.
What will be happening last night and this morning is that every Republican member of Congress who's in a reasonably marginal seat, someone who's, say, +5, +6, +8, +10 last year, much closer than this seat was last year, is looking at these numbers and doing back of the envelope calculations about their own seat. And what would this mean for me if this is how it plays out where I am next year? And there will be lots of very worried Republicans this morning. Dozens of seats would flip in the House next year if a swing like this was to happen in 2026, November 2026, a long time away. But were this to play out the same way in the midterms, that is a big blue wave election.
Yeah, and most Republicans that I've been talking to are pointing to the affordability, cost of living issue, as we've seen this play out in polls too. I saw some Republican sources last night who were telling me, boy, we are really screwing this up on affordability. We cannot get the message right. We cannot figure out how to connect with voters on this, and the Dems are running away with it right now. And we better get our shit together before we really hit midterms. So the alarm bells are ringing, and of course that ultimately lands with the guy in the Oval Office, which is President Trump.
It does. And, we've been talking about this on this podcast for a whole month now, Dasha. So we're a month on from those
Hmm.
off-year elections at the start of November that went so badly for the Republicans. And suddenly, affordability was the whole narrative. And it was all about, can the Republicans turn this around? You heard from James Blair in the White House that they were very much hearing the message. Donald Trump was going to start talking about this more. And he has started talking about it every day, but not in a way that is helping the Republicans. We heard it again yesterday at another epic cabinet meeting where he started ranting about this. But the message from the president was not, America, I hear you. I know you're struggling. I'm going to do everything I can to help you. He's telling Americans they're wrong about this. He keeps saying affordability is a con job, that the Democrats have made it up, that prices are down. And of course, some prices are down. Many, many prices are not down. And Donald Trump is showing no willingness to engage with that at all.
The following event after the cabinet meeting was this big announcement about the Trump accounts and this billionaire donor providing $6 billion in funds.
Incredible, right?
Oh, incredible. And like that's the contrast is in the cabinet meeting. He says affordability is a Democratic scam. But then the next event is announcing some practical steps for American families, especially for children. So that's the dichotomy that you can see his team dealing with his messaging problem on affordability with trying to put some real policy, real impact and tactics behind it. And it's an interesting split screen.
Yeah, well, you can see his team desperately trying to do something about it. But it seems to me that, there's only so much they can do if your message carrier is very clear in his mind that it's not the problem that people are saying that it is, or at least that's what he keeps telling us day after day after day. And I think that is unlikely to connect with people who are going to the store and struggling to pay for the groceries that they need. And I just don't see a way around that.
They have to have a messaging strategy, and they have to have a reality that's good for them economically too, right? That's the other thing in the debate that I'm hearing among Republicans and among even folks in and close to the White House is, how are these tariffs going to bear out? How are the president's energy policies going to bear out? How are the tax cuts from the one big beautiful bill going to impact people? Like, you're going to start to see real effects from some of these policies in the first half of next year, and the president's closest allies are betting that the big beautiful bill and potentially tariff dividends and all these other things that they're doing are going to make people feel differently about the economy, which is it. Like that's the rub. How do people feel? And that's a combination of messaging, but you can message till the cows come home if and it's not going to do a thing if people are going to the grocery store and feel like that's not connecting.
You're completely right. And to be clear, that could happen. I've spoken to people in the administration who are totally convinced that the economy is going to be in a very different place by next summer. And if people are feeling good and rich and spending and government's giving them checks to spend, and they're, the world will change dramatically. We're almost a year away from the midterms, but that needs to happen. And that is very much not a guaranteed thing where we are now, but that is what the Republicans need to happen. Or they need to find a way of talking about this that makes people feel like
Right.
he's fighting for them and things are going to change, even if they haven't changed by next November.
Well, at this point, they might need both, because Democrats are starting to latch on and figure out how to run with this narrative, and that's new for Dems over the last couple of years. They've really struggled to connect with voters, and they're starting to gain some traction, and that's something that Republicans should be watching really closely.
I think that's really true. When we were looking at this at the start of the year, the Democrats were in such disarray and they really didn't have any sort of strategy, no kind of leadership. They were just hurting and really struggling to cope with what had happened in November. Now they've got something that they've seized onto. Like, Aftyn Behn, as you say, had her problems, but she was absolutely hammering it on affordability. And that is now the Democratic playbook. Everybody knows that that's what they need to do well in elections. That isn't going to change next year, right? Every single candidate, whether they're as progressive as they come, whether they're centrist as they come, is going to be saying the same things about affordability now.
Yep. It took them some time to figure out, but they've latched on, they've got it, and that's going to pose a serious threat to the
And
GOP.
let's not forget, Dasha, that of course these Obamacare subsidies are going to run out in a few weeks. And it seemed pretty clear from listening to important voices on the Hill yesterday that there isn't going to be a Republican fix in the next few weeks. I mean, I guess that's kind of inevitable now. They're all going home for the holidays pretty soon. So those subsidies are going to run out. And, that's going to affect millions of people in a very, very intense pocketbook way. And those people are going to make their voices heard as well. And the Republicans are going to need an answer.
Yeah, it's fascinating because every Republican I talk to, including in the White House, is we got to figure this out. We have ideas. We have all of these ideas. Obamacare has been terrible, but nothing has come to fruition yet. We'll see. But these subsidies are going to run out, and that is potentially going to compound the disastrous messaging on the economy.
Let's talk about Ukraine because Steve Witkoff, the special envoy, and indeed the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, of course, were in Moscow yesterday, hanging out with Vladimir Putin for a few hours. They flew back last night, and it's pretty clear that there was no big breakthrough. We've only really had a readout from the Kremlin at this point, which is never ideal, but the Kremlin was pretty clear there's no deal, which I think we can safely assume means there is no deal. So it's very hard to know where this story goes from here. Donald Trump, you would expect, would want to get involved, but there's no apparent plan for a follow-up Putin-Trump summit, which is, I guess, what you would have expected, Dasha, if they were about to hammer out a final agreement.
Yeah, it's really been this hurry up and wait when it comes
Right.
to the momentum. Everyone scrambles. It seems like it's really really hot, and then all of a sudden, typically Russia kind of dumps a cold bucket of water on the whole thing. And I think this is going to really um, rile up the president. I mean, he was really hoping that in time for the holidays, he could end this year having, notched another win on the world stage. We'll see. There is still some time, and it did seem like the White House was extremely bullish over the last couple of weeks. But will be interesting to see what the tone is around how realistic a deal is in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, we may get some more reporting today, or indeed some official commentary today coming out of the US side that'll give us a clearer picture of what
Yeah.
actually happened in Moscow. But I think, when we had Paul McCleary on yesterday, our Pentagon reporter, and saying to him, I just don't see where the deal is to be done. Vladimir Putin is not ready to back down on his demands. It's pretty clear, and Ukraine is not ready to just roll over and give up. And so I just wonder, is there a point where Donald Trump just walks away from this whole thing and says, you know what, I've spent enough time on this?
I mean, we've had that conversation a number of times. He's put that idea out a number of times, but I get the sense this is something he's not really willing to let go of.
He's not a quitter, is he?
No, he's not. And again, this war and peace stuff, it's really something he's um gotten really involved with, really passionate about. I think there's a huge element of legacy here for him, and we've talked about presidents in their second terms turning toward foreign policy as they think about what footprint they're going to leave. I think that's very much the case for the president. I'm skeptical that he would step back from this entirely, but it's certainly not going the way that he had planned or hoped.
All right. One of the stories that could definitely develop through the day. The other one that, of course, we're all watching is Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, whose big week just got a whole lot bigger, Dasha. I mean, we've
Yeah.
been talking about him all week already with this Pentagon boat strike, and we saw him talking about it again at that cabinet meeting yesterday, and putting even more clear water, if I can use that term, between himself and the decision to fire more missiles at the boat after it already had been struck. Now, a previous Hegseth scandal is coming back into the news cycle, the Signalgate story, which I'm sure people listening will remember pretty well what happened with that. Well, the Inspector General, who's been carrying out an independent assessment of what actually happened, has finished their report. Pete Hegseth has read the report, we believe, and it is going to be published, or at least some sort of redacted form of it is going to be published tomorrow. And this is a seminal moment for him.
Yeah, the way that the administration, the president has dealt with problematic officials is to avoid, as I hear all the time behind the scenes, like they don't want to give the media and Democrats a scalp. So if Democrats, and if the headline is, Hegseth needs to resign, he's going to resist that in that moment. However, that doesn't mean that Hegseth is safe. He's been on thin ice for quite some time. Signalgate was one of the most frustrating scandals to the president. He didn't like it. He didn't like how much attention it drew. It drew away from all of the stuff that he was doing. And Hegseth has made a number of moves that have been sort of unforced errors in the eyes of some folks in the West Wing. And so, I wouldn't expect the dominoes to all fall at the same time, but depending on what we see in that report, and also, I mean, the Venezuela issue, there are a lot of like pretty hardcore MAGA people I talk to that are not happy with how the administration is playing it on Venezuela, and are seriously concerned about what these boat strikes are going to mean, and if there's going to be a land incursion and what resources that it's going to take from the U.S. All of that stuff.
Do you think it's more people around Trump rather than Trump himself who are a bit unsure about Pete Hegseth? That's sort of the sense I get. What do you think?
It's frustration with his inability to avoid being in the headlines for the wrong reasons.
Right. There's been a series of issues, right? One thing after another, basically, since the
series of
confirmation.
issues, and the image that's been painted of the Pentagon is one of chaos and lack of serious leadership. There are plenty of White House officials that aren't thrilled with that.
All right, let's see how well the rest of Pete Hegseth week goes. Before we go, Dasha, I want to talk to you about one of your favourite topics, Dulles International Airport, a place I know you spend far more of your life than you probably want to. We heard from Donald Trump at yesterday's cabinet meeting, rather apropos of nothing, that his administration is planning to rebuild Dulles and wants to make enormous changes to it. He says it's not a good airport, which I think many of us would agree with.
I think that is one thing that almost will get universal approval there. Dulles is not. I have been to so many airports in this country. I mean, a lot of airports, the greats, the goods, the terribles.
Which is your favorite airport in the US?
Okay, so people are going to think I actually really like the Pittsburgh airport because it's so easy. The rental car place is right there. There's not some big long shuttle. It's straightforward. Also, Grand Rapids with the Founders Brewery inside.
Ooh,
really great.
Now you're talking my language. Okay,
whereas
Dulles
has
Dulles has its own unique feature, which is the people movers. It's the people movers. It's these weird 1960s buses, lounge things.
Again, I've seen a lot of weird stuff at airports. A lot of weird stuff. We won't get into it. But when I landed at Dulles for the first time and stepped into this vestibule, and suddenly it's like starts moving, but it's not a train, it's not a bus,
it's a vision of the future from 1967 or something like that.
It's the most bizarre thing. So that's the biggest target. I don't know, I don't think we have the full details of what he's gonna do to Dulles.
I don't think they know yet.
But they do know that people movers equals bad.
That is the one thing. If I was a people mover, I would be deeply worried that my days are numbered. I think once this administration has you in its sights, I think the sort of East Wing treatment is headed
And if any of you out there are like, oh, nostalgia, no, I love them. No. Get rid of those things. It's absurd.
All right, there you go. Dasha, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks all for listening. That's all we got time for, but we've got loads more news and analysis of people movers and everything else in today's Playbook newsletter. You can find that at politico.com/playbook, and we will be back with you tomorrow.
DM me if you want more hot tips on airports.
There you go. See you later.
Bye, guys.